says to Obadiah, go tell Ahab that I'm here, I'm coming back. He's like, really? I don't want to do that. And so, as surely as the Lord your God lives, there's not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave you. If I go and tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he's going to kill me for sure. Yet I, your servant, have worshiped the Lord since my youth. Haven't you heard, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets into 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. And now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. He will kill me. Elijah, he says to Obadiah, he says, as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today. I'm not going to let you down, he says. I'll be there. So Obadiah, he went to meet Ahab, and he told him. And Ahab went to meet Elijah. So 1 Kings chapter 18 tells us that we're in the 3rd year of the drought. God tells Elijah to reveal himself to Ahab. It is time for him to bring rain upon the earth, and Elijah will bring this word. But it wasn't going to just rain. The rain is going to accompany a great battle between gods. The God that Ahab had chosen to follow, the gods of Baal, and the God, the creator of heaven and earth, the God of Israel. This chapter begins with this man named Obadiah. He's in charge of the palace of King Ahab. But he also greatly fears the Lord. He's serving a king who is following the gods of Baal rather than the God of Israel, and yet he is still following his Lord. He's serving this wicked man, but yet still serving his Lord. He greatly fears the Lord. Verse 4 reveals the faith of Obadiah. When the prophets had been persecuted and had begun to be put to death by Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab, he hides 100 of them. He grabs them and secludes them away. And even in the drought and the famine, scares up enough water and food to sustain them in their seclusion. 3 years of drought has made life difficult for Israel. And I recognize and I realize that some of us, probably all of us, have gone through one of these like 3-year seasons, these seasons of drought and famine. You might be in one right now. You may have just come out of one. You may be able to remember a time or a season in your life where it seemed like there was no provision. That's what these people have been experiencing. A 3-year drought made life difficult. You know, when you've gone through a season like that, life is difficult, right? Anybody say amen to life is difficult? While looking for grass, Obadiah runs into Elijah. Elijah tells him, go get King Ahab. Big news coming. Now Obadiah, he says, wait. You're gonna send me after him, and then you're not going to be here when he comes, and then he's going to kill me. And he's like, no, just go get Ahab. I will be here when you get back. And now, before we leave this introduction to the story, I want you to think a little bit about this man Obadiah, the life of Obadiah. He's working for the most wicked king the nation would ever know. And he has still kept his faith in the Lord. He's still serving the Lord. Obadiah has testimony after testimony of serving God, even though he's serving the most wicked king in this nation's history. He has a testimony of faithfulness. Can I share a testimony with you where I wasn't so much like Obadiah. I know y'all think I'm pretty much perfect, right? Right. So early on in my faith journey, early on, after I'd been called to ministry, I began going to school online, Nazarene Bible College, to get my education to become a pastor. And I was also working for a company called Aramark Uniform Services. And working for Aramark was like working for the devil or the mob. You pick. It was just a crooked business. The laundry business is just a crooked business. And I was working and going to Bible college, and so much of what I was doing at work was starting to conflict with what I was learning and who I was becoming as a Christian. And I was struggling. I was battling against it. And I nearly lost this job. And this was the only job I had. This was it. This was the only job for my family. It was providing everything for my family. It was a good job. And along this way, I convinced myself, because it started to get difficult. When I wanted to stand up for what I thought was right, I came in direct conflict with my boss, my bosses. And I was going to lose that. I was potentially going to lose this job. And I had convinced myself that I had heard God say to me, surely, I had this idea, this thought, surely God doesn't want me to lose this job. Surely God doesn't. Never listen to anyone named Shirley. There's no Shirleys here today, right? I convinced, surely God doesn't want me to lose this job, so I need to acquiesce. I need to give in to what they're telling me, even if it is in stark contrast with what I think is right and what I believe is true. Every Wednesday we had these sales meetings. They were just the stupidest thing, and it was really the only day I had to be to work at any given time. I could kind of call my own hours. I could show up when I wanted. I mean, I had to show up early, but I could kind of pick and choose. But on Wednesdays, you had to be there at 6:30 a.m. for these stupid sales meetings. And I was paranoid about missing one of these, because surely God didn't want me to lose this job. So on Tuesday nights, Kristen and I, we would literally set 2 alarms. One on her side of the bed, one on my side of the bed. Well, on this particular Wednesday morning, neither one of those alarms went off. Neither one went off. And I'm supposed to be there at 6:30, right? And my eyes pop open at 6:30. And neither alarm has gone off. I mean, we checked. And so I'm freaking out. I mean, surely God doesn't want me to lose this. I'm going to lose this job. And so I throw on my clothes as fast as I can, and I jump in the car, and I speed to work, and I finally get there, and I walk in, and the sales meeting is just kind of wrapping up, and the boss meets me, and he's like, in my office. And I walk in, and he's like, that's it. You're suspended. Go home. We're going to let the union figure this out. And I'm standing in his office, and I'm freaking out, and I'm like, surely God doesn't want me to lose this job, and you got to stop listening to Shirley. And I even said, out of my mouth came these words, because I had cleaned the slate of extra stuff to try to be able to focus on Shirley not losing this job. And I'd even quit going to Bible college. Quit pursuing my education to fulfill the call that God had placed on my life. And out of my mouth, I say to this guy, I said, you know what? I have sold out. I've sold everything out to do this job, to keep this job. I've even quit going to Bible college to keep this job. And all of a sudden, it got very quiet. I mean, he was talking, but it got very quiet, and I heard the voice of the Lord say, what? You did what? You sold out who? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And you're not going to believe what happened. I lost my job. And I was unemployed for several months. But God met our every need. And not only did he meet our every need, he provided, the next job he provided was the absolute perfect job so I could do school and work and provide for my family and prepare myself and let God prepare me for my first full-time ministry. It was not an Obadiah moment. So if you've struggled having Obadiah moments, serving the Lord even in the midst of wickedness, don't feel bad. Your pastor has a testimony of that as well. But here Obadiah, he's not a prophet. He's not a king. He's just an everyday average guy. And he's doing everything he can to be a servant of God. He takes advantage of the opportunities that are in front of him to serve the Lord. Obadiah is just like you and me. Every day, working to serve the Lord. Realizing that even though things might try to pull him away, he can still serve God in the midst of it. Obadiah, in this moment that Elijah shows up, he's got all kinds of fear. As we notice in the conversation with Elijah, he's like, no. You say you're going to be here, but you're not, and I'm going to get killed. And we can learn from Obadiah because even though we may approach things with some fear, we can trust a God who says he will provide. When God says to Elijah, go and reveal what's next to Ahab, and he conveys to Obadiah, you go. I don't care how scared you are. God and I will be right here when you get back. God can do the same for you. We can all learn from Obadiah. He overcomes his fear and he keeps on serving the Lord. Now to Elijah and Ahab. Verse 17, when Ahab saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, O troubler of Israel? Essentially, Ahab's saying, you're the one who's brought all this trouble on this nation. And Elijah says, I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and you followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah. Eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And this is really kind of our key text for today. How long will you waver between two opinions? God or Baal? How long will you waver? The people, they said nothing. Ahab arrives, seeing Elijah. It's you, man. It's you that have brought all of this trouble on us. Oh, no. It's you, Ahab. It's your poor leadership. You've chosen to follow a false god, is what he says to him. Remember, Elijah, he called for the drought through the word of the Lord. And the drought was because Israel had become wicked. And this is why Elijah responds that it's Ahab who has brought this trouble on Israel. The drought has come because Ahab has abandoned the commandments of the Lord. Elijah, he addresses all the people of Israel with an important question. How long are you going to waver between? How long are you going to limp between God and false gods? How long are you going to be stuck between these two opinions? How long are you going to keep waffling and faltering between two gods? Israel, if the Lord is God, then follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. It's time to put up or shut up. It is far past time to end the nonsense of faltering between two gods and limping back and forth, wavering between two opinions. It's time to choose whom will you serve. And this is a powerful moment in the life of the nation of Israel, and it's a powerful moment in our lives because far too many people are limping between Jesus and their own gods. The gods of comfort, pleasure, convenience, career. Surely God doesn't want me to lose this job. Wealth, success, power, prestige. All of those things can pull us away from God. And all too often, that leaves us limping between the two. So it's time to decide. Will we be strong in the Lord or strong in our idols? Notice, the people remain silent as Elijah calls them to this moment of decision. Verse 22. Elijah said to them, I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left. But Baal, they got 450 prophets. So he issues a challenge. A silent nation needs to see their God in a powerful way. He says, get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces, put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull, and I will put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, well, he will be God. And then all the people said, what you say is good. We'll just see who shows up. You ever notice that's kind of the way culture works too? We'll just see whoever shows up today. And all too often, the wicked show and the righteous run, but not today. Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls, prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull, given them, and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah, he began to taunt them. I love this. He began to shout louder. Come on now. Surely he is a God. Perhaps your God is deep in thought. I mean, maybe he's in the can, deep in thought. I don't know. Maybe he's busy. I mean, maybe he's watching the game. Or he's traveling. He's on vacation. When he returns, he'll take it. Maybe he's just sleeping. And he must be awakened, so shout louder. So they shouted louder, and they slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom. Do you ever notice how people deface themselves when they're following the wrong God? Just something to think about. I'm not going to pry at all there. So they slashed themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed. Midday passed and they continued. They're frantic, prophesying until the time of the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. So Elijah, he offers a challenge. We're on Mount Carmel. You get your bull ready, I'll get my bull ready. We'll call on our God. We'll see who shows up first. If your God shows, then he's the one true God. If my God shows, then everyone will know what I've been talking about the whole time. 2 altars. 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal call out. Their God doesn't respond. All the people of Israel agreed this would be a good test. This would be a good challenge. Elijah tells the prophets of Baal, go first. From morning till night, till noon, that they cry out, "Oh, Baal, answer us." But there was no voice. No one answered. The prophets are leaping and dancing around the altar, shouting and screaming, trying to do anything to get their God to respond. They're making a spectacle of themselves, dancing around this altar, trying to get their God to respond. Sure kind of mirrors our culture, doesn't it? Do you often see people dancing around their altar, making a spectacle of themselves, trying to find their fulfillment, their answers? Seeing this utter failure, and the people of Israel watching this scene, Elijah takes the opportunity to make the point clear to the people. Notice in verse 27 that Elijah begins to mock the prophets of Baal. Shout louder! Surely he is God. Oh, he's deep in thought. Busy, traveling, sleeping. You got to make yourself a bigger, you fill in the blank. And then maybe he'll show. Maybe your God got lost. The mockery does not dissuade the prophets. You know, I think it's interesting. We live in a world that mocks God and celebrates, dare I say, stupidity that we've covered in the word diversity. I better not get too far along there for fear of getting an email or two. But I don't know if you've followed the punter for the Kansas City Chiefs got to speak at a commencement last weekend. And he praised the young men and women who were graduating from college. But he also took that moment to talk about his Christian beliefs. Believe he's Catholic, but his beliefs. And he encouraged the women that were graduating to not place their career or anything else above being called to be a mom. I haven't really listened to it, but the gist of it was, he's like, even as a college graduate, don't feel like you can't be who God called you to be as a mom or a woman too. And man, the crazy people just came unglued. They wanted him fired. One of the best kickers in the NFL. They want him fired. Like, you know what the Chiefs ought to do? Because he offended all women, they ought to hire a woman to be a kicker. I mean, the mockery that comes from speaking the truth is all too often unbelievable. I think it's time that the people of faith take a page out of Elijah's book and mock the wickedness as much as the wickedness mock the godly. What say you? I don't know. Would we get in too much trouble for that? Is our God not powerful enough to defend his people if his people choose to defend what is right? I don't know. So they call upon Baal. All the more, they cut themselves. They're trying to gain their God's attention. Yet, they can't seem to get it. Scripture tells us that they finished the day continuing to call out to Baal. But look at what verse 29 says. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. For Baal, this was an empty pursuit. To call upon Baal was an empty pursuit for the nation of Israel. And in all honesty, whenever you and I waver between two gods, it's an empty pursuit. It's an empty pursuit. Why do we think that we will find joy and happiness in the idols of the world? We are deceived into such foolish thinking. We call upon our gods, and there's no answer. No one pays attention. Why is that? Well, why is it that we refuse to see the emptiness in the pursuits of the world? We're blinded by the God of this world. And we just continue pursuing our passions rather than pursuing Jesus. I think it's time that we really truly consider, stop limping between our ideas and God. See, the message to us all is just quit wavering. Because when you waver, the only thing you're doing is hurting yourself. And all this limping through life, as long as we continue to limp between two opinions, the reality will be our lives will continue to be a mess. And you won't ever experience the healing and hope that God wants to give you. See, life, when you got one foot planted in the Lord, but the other foot planted in the world, is never what God wanted for us. Jesus warned us that we cannot serve two masters. But we sure do try. Jumping between two opinions just leaves us limping about in life, unable to enjoy and experience what God wants us to have. And one of the most frequent ways we limp between two opinions is when we choose God in this. I'm going to choose Him in this. I want to choose Him in this subject, but I don't want to choose Him in this one. I'll choose God in this, but not in that. That's the main way that we waver between two opinions. I'll trust God in my marriage, but not with my finances. I'll trust God in the way that I raise my kids, but I won't trust God in the way that I behave away from. When I'm not a father, when I take the dad hat off and put the other hat on, I'll be way different than I am when I want my kids to learn and pay attention and follow along. When things are good, we frequently forget the Lord and do what we want. But when bad times come, we limp back to the Lord. But in between, when we're limping back and forth, depending on how good and bad life is, we just seem to live in a mess. And God is telling us that this limp, this wavering is coming from our own failure to completely devote ourselves to the Lord. James speaks of this. James 1, verses 6 through 8. James says, "But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive everything or anything from the Lord. Such person is double-minded and unstable in all they do." I have some things in my life that not everybody would like, or some people would think, oh, I don't know what you do. I love, and this is weird. This is just I love the old TV show. It's sad that I'm saying that it's an old TV show. I love the old show Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld. I love The Office. I love The Big Bang Theory. I mean, sometimes they're crude, they're rude, this and that and the other thing, but there's great theology in them. There is. You can preach Seinfeld, and you can preach The Office, and you can preach The Big Bang. So give me a moment. I'm just going to preach Seinfeld for just a minute, and we're going to wrap up. You know George? Poor old George Costanza. George, he meets a gal named Susan, and he's going to get married. Somehow gets trapped into asking this gal to marry him, and they get engaged. And in the process, she starts to kind of infiltrate their friend group. And this does not set well with George. Elaine, the female friend of Kramer and Jerry and George, she starts to become friends with Susan. And George freaks out because what it's revealing is that there are two Georges. There is relationship George, and there's independent George. And everybody in the friend group loves independent George. And if relationship George infiltrates the world of independent George, worlds will collide. Everybody loves liar George and coffee shop George and go to the movies George and body George. But if relationship George meets independent George, worlds will collide. The George that everybody loves will cease becoming independent George. Worlds are colliding. And so many of us find ourselves in the same place. It might not be relationship and independent, but it is two different worlds. There's the person you are at work and the person you are at home. The person you are at church and the person you are with the guys you golf with. The person you are when you go out with some friends on a Friday night. And the person you are that shows up on a Sunday morning to worship God. And those worlds, if ever brought together, will collide. And the person you really love to be will cease to exist. But in that, the common thing that you seem to always end up is instability. You can't ever find stability between the two people. When those worlds collide, the foundation crumbles. There's no stability. But I'm here today to tell you that stability is only found in God. It's only found in God. That's why our mission statement is so simple but yet so profound. Placing Jesus at the center of life. Because when Jesus is at the center of life, you can become one person. And everything else in your life revolves around Christ at the center. And you filter the guy you are, the person you are at work through Jesus at the center. You filter even who you are on a Sunday morning. And when you sit in Sunday school class, and we have conversations, and when you share the testimony of God. Do you know sometimes people can share the testimony of God on a Sunday and yet curse on Monday? But with Jesus at the center, those two worlds, they do collide. And if Jesus is at the center, he overcomes and he overwhelms the ungodly world. So if you've been around here any length of time and you're like, I don't know why we went through that process of saying that we're coming up with a mission statement, it is critical. Because with Jesus at the center, everything else is filtered through your relationship with him. That's what Elijah was trying to illustrate to the nation of Israel. You're running all over the place, trying to find satisfaction and provision, all kinds of other gods. But the one true God has been here all the time. Now, not quite sure where we're going next week, but if we go to the second part of this story, Elijah doesn't have to call God very much before he shows himself. You got these knuckleheads prancing around an altar, and their God doesn't show up. And he doesn't show up, and he doesn't show up. Elijah's God shows up right on time. And I'm here to tell you that if you can stop prancing around the other altar and focus on the one true, God will show up right on time. That morning, when I said, I've sold out everything for you in this job, and the Lord said to me, what did you just say? Was probably one of the most profound moments in my life. It forced Kristen and I into a season where we had to trust the Lord. Put our complete trust in him. And he provided. I mean, bags of groceries showed up. Friends gave us money. I mean, things just happened. And we don't have time to share the whole story, but when God was ready to provide employment for the two of us that provided everything that we needed, he did it. Not a month early, not the day after I got fired, but at the absolute moment we needed it. Not an hour too soon, not an hour too late. Right, honey? And we were ready for it. And we were ready for it. See, she should preach sometime. You need to encourage her. And we're going to sing a song. It's been one of my jams for a while. It's called More Than Able. And so you can sit, you can stand, you can worship with us. When we're done, I'm going to pray. But I'm here to tell you that we have a God who is more than able. So stop wavering. Stop limping between two gods. Put Jesus at the center and trust God for everything else.
Start to forget all of the great things you did. When did I throw away faith of the impossible? And how did I start to believe that you weren't sufficient for me? Why do I talk myself out of seeing miracles? Oh, 'cause you are more than able.
confidence.
confidence back. I put my trust in that one who still does miracles.
You do miracles, and you are more than able. You are more than able. You are more than able. And you are more than able. So who am I to deny what the Lord can do?
Can you imagine, with all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do? What the Lord can do? It's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. Yes, he's gonna move. Can you imagine,
With all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do, what the Lord can do, it's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. Yes, he's gonna move. Can you imagine, with all of the faith in the room, what the Lord can do, what the Lord can do, it's gonna happen. Just let the way make it through. He's gonna move. Yes, he's gonna move. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? I've come a long way. I've seen how you work. And there's so much goodness and grace, much more than I deserve. Because I know who I am, but I can't stay where I am at. Cause we've come this far by faith, and I just can't turn back. Cause you're not done with me yet. You're not done with me yet. There's so much more to this story. You're not done with me yet. You're not done with me.